我哋而家咧係
Members, we have formed a quorum. I now call the meeting to order. This meeting will last from 8:30 to 10:30. We have to vacate the room by 10:45, so we need to manage our time. Today we have 3 items. Before we start, I would like to remind members that since the last regular meeting held on the 16th of March, we have received 21 information papers. The details are set out in item 1 of the agenda. Let's now move on to the second item. Items for discussion at the next meeting. Please refer to CP4 951 1718 bracket 01 list of outstanding items for discussion, and also the CP4 951 1718 bracket 02 list of follow-up actions. We are going to have our next regular meeting held on the 18th of May. The government has proposed 3 items. First, progress of implementation measures under public transport strategy study. Second item, MTR fare adjustment for 2018. And the third item is operational arrangements for Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge and the Hong Kong Port. Members, do you agree that we should advance the starting time of the next meeting to 10, and so that the meeting can end at 12:45, in order that we have sufficient time for 3 items? Members, any comments? Ms. Taya Chen, last time we said we should list XRL as a regular item, and you can tell from the letters submitted by members that we are very concerned about this project. We know that there is a subcommittee on railways, but we are of the view that for fares, frequency, the service schedule should also be discussed at this panel, and we have to also tackle the MOU, the economic return of the project. We have been trying to get information, but to no avail. But the government should give an account to this panel instead of going on some radio program to make announcements. Next time we're going to discuss Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Of course, this is a matter close to our mind. And also we need to get some update from the MTRC. So we should do something about the necessary follow-up action on the XRL. Mr. Lam Chuk-ting, well, I want to talk about another matter. I've talked to Mr. Michael Tin after the last meeting. Actually, if we are going to talk about the operation of XRL, it will fall under the purview of the subcommittee on railways, but fares should be discussed in this panel. But there are other matters that you talk about apart from fares. Mr. Michael Tin is working out something with the THB on further meeting arrangements. Mr. Lam Chuk-ting, earlier you asked us whether we should have a duty visit. I just wonder when this will be raised for discussion. Well, we're now talking about smart city, and then smart traffic and transport should be one of the items. Well, we ranked 58 in a recent survey on the so-called smartness. and Singapore is 31. So I thought maybe it would be good to discuss this today as regards whether we should have a duty visit. The last duty visit to Singapore was made in 2014. So maybe by show of hands, let's see if members are interested. All right, but perhaps given this level of interest, let's defer the discussion. It's still early in the morning. Maybe we can issue a circular to panel members. I would think that this is going to be a worthwhile duty visit, because Singapore provides a good reference, in my view, in terms of in view of the size and the arrangements for in the cities and urban setting. Mr. Chen and Ben, I think we should visit Singapore. We can certainly learn from them. For example, we should learn from the way they provide car parking facilities. We haven't seen anything new coming from the government concerning the parking facilities and so on and so forth for the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge project. This is actually the third item for the next meeting. Okay, I see. I have sent a letter to you, Chairman, concerning the artificial island of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. And there's a response from the government, especially the water breaker of the artificial islands of Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. I think the government should properly respond to our concern and the public concern. One of the ways to address people's concerns is to pay a visit to the artificial islands there. But all the government has done is just to say that they are safe. But it would be better if we have go there to have on the spot tour. All right, I will issue a circular to members to invite comments and indication of interest for duty visit to Singapore. Dr. Kokake, next week, we are going to discuss an item on the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Mr. Gary Fan has proposed a duty visit. So perhaps it's better that we pay a visit before we discuss the item in the next meeting. Because now it seems that different people have told different stories. So can we arrange a visit before the next panel meeting? I'll try to work out some possible dates with the government for members to choose. All right, next item. Item number 3, provision of Hillside escalator link and elevator system and elevator walkway. Please invite the officials to join us. And I would like to remind members that if you have a direct or indirect peculiar interest in relation to the discussion items to date under Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure, please disclose the nature of the interest before you speak.
On this item, please refer to CB bracket 4951/1718 and CB 4951/1718 prepared by the Electrical Secretariat. Welcome officials for attending this meeting. We have Ms. Rebecca Pun, Deputy Secretary for Transport and Housing, Ms. Judy Chong, Principal Assistant Secretary for Transport and Housing, Mr. Choi Wing-Hwa, Deputy Director of Highways Department, Mr. Calvin Low, Project Manager, Major Works, Highways Department, Mr. Philip Lam, Chief Engineer, Major Works, Highways Department, Mr. Chu Shunhua, Principal Project Coordinator, Highways Department, Mr. Patrick Ho, Chief Traffic Engineer, Transport Department. Ms. Poon, you are going to brief us? Yes. Good morning, Chairman and members. On provision of Hillside Escalator link and elevator system and elevated walkway, we are here to seek members' views on upgrading this to Cat A. So in the Chief Executive's policy address, it said that we will continue to enhance Hillside Escalator link and elevator system and elevated walkway. And also, for the elevated pedestrian corridor in Yuen Long Town connecting with Long Ping Station, this is to alleviate pedestrian flow. In Kwai Chung Shek Lei Chung, members of the public will have to make a big detour to and from Kwai Hing MTR station in order to offer more convenient pedestrian flow. So on Kwai Chung Castle Peak Road, we propose 2 elevated pedestrian walkways, and in Yuen Long Town Center, where the roads are very busy, Awning Road, Castle Peak Road, Yuen Long section, and Education Road, we propose a sheltered pedestrian corridor to alleviate congestion. So on money of the day terms, the cost is 584.4 million and 1.784 billion. So we hope that the funding application can be approved so that we can go to PWSC and FC for funding approval. If this item can be approved within this LegCo year, then in Q1 of 2019, we will start the lift and pedestrian walkway system between Castle Peak Road and Kong Yip Street, Kwai Chung, and it will be completed in Q2 in 2023 for elevated pedestrian corridor in Yuen Long Town connecting with Long Ping Station. So we plan to start works in the second half of 2018, and it will be completed in 2023. Now I will defer to my colleague to continue the presentation. Please be brief. Chairman, members, we are briefing members on the lift and pedestrian walkway system between Castle Peak Road and Kong Yip Street, Kwai Chung. In around Shek Lei, there are many schools, and there are 3,600 elders, and there are Shek Lei 1 estate and also some private residential developments, and also 1 primary school, 2 secondary schools. Now, there are about 3,000 students. So if members in this area or residents in this area want to go to and from Castle Peak Road to go to Chuen Wan, there are now 2 options. One is via Shek Pai Street. And here you can see this walkway with length 300 meters, and then they can reach the bus stops here, or they can go via Hillside Road near Shek Lei Estate. The steep is of a gradient of around 30 meters, and there are some staircases nearby. Can you go faster, Mr. Chu? Okay. And then residents can make use of the current pedestrian walkway to the footbridge, and then to Kong Yip Street, and then to the light rail station. So there is 1 escalator link and elevator system, and 1 elevator tower is on Kong Yip Street, and then on 2 sides of Castle Peak Road, there are elevator towers. And then connecting these towers, there is an elevated walkway connecting to Shek Lei Estate. Let me go through the construction of these towers. On Kong Yip Street, there is a tower of 40 meters high, and then an escalator link of length 70 meter and width 3 meters. And for this elevator tower, the height is 40 meters, connecting to Shedley Estate. And there is an elevated walkway with length 50 meters, connecting the structures. Here you can see Kong Yip Street. This is the computer simulated diagram of the elevator tower, and then this is a view from Castle Peak Road of the tower. So the daily usage of this elevator system will be around 5,100. So construction cost will be about 584.4 million on money of the day terms. And we hope to start works in Q1 of 2019. It will be completed in Q2 of 2023. Then I will pass on to my colleague to introduce the next item. Okay, Mr. Lam? Yes. Now I will talk about item 182. This project is from Longping Station to the Nola. And it is an elevated pedestrian corridor to alleviate pedestrian flow. Here you can see the eastbound and westbound path of Castle Peak Road. It is very congested. So from Longping Station to Khao Yuk Road, the length is 540 meters, width 6 meters. There will be 6 proposed pedestrian connecting platforms. And on each platform there will be elevator and escalator and staircase. This shows the design of the walkway. So there will be rather simple steel structures, and the color scheme will be very harmonious with the nearby environment. If we get approval from FC within this legislative year, then construction costs will be 1.785 billion on money of the day terms. We expect to start works in the second half of 2018. It will be completed in 2023. So that's all. Thank you. Right. There is only half an hour for this item. 7 members would like to speak, so each will have 3 minutes. First, Mr. Jeffrey Lam. The CE said in her policy address that in different parts of Hong Kong, Hillside escalator link and elevator system should be built, and I welcome this proposal from Highway Department to improve pedestrian congestion and safety problem. I have 2 questions. First, for this project, what will be your overall timetable? And what kind of publicity work will you do, and what will be the arrangement during construction when there is road diversion? Sometimes people on the first day of construction are not aware of the construction works, and they will always walk the wrong way, and that will lead to danger to other pedestrians. Sometimes after some housing units are built, then the government will then start to improve by building escalators and elevators. So when you develop a new area or a housing estate, can you think about the supporting facilities at one go so that when people move in, the facilities are ready? I think that will be better. Thank you. Ms. Poon, or Highways Department? Thank you, Chairman. Concerning timetable, in the paper, we stated that if within this legislative year we can get the approval, then in Q1 of 2019 we will start the work. And based on our current estimate, by Q2 of 2023, the project will be completed. During the construction process, will there be road diversion that may inconvenience pedestrians and residents? After completion of the project, in fact, nearby roads will not be changed. During the works period, there may be short-term road changes or diversion. And in that case, we will take into careful consideration residents' situation, and we will provide enough directions and signage. No, I'm not referring to publicity on the spot. I am talking about publicity before the construction work so that road users will be aware. Before we start the works, we will communicate with district councillors and nearby owners' corporations. We will let them know when we will start the works. Mr. Lam suggested that before the works, you should start publicity work earlier, so he hopes you would do that. What about the third question concerning new town planning? Will you plan for facilities at one go so that residents won't need to suffer from a lot of inconvenience or hardship after moving in? Will you do that? Thank you, member, for the questions. In the future, on new town planning, we will make sure that there will be good mobility because we promote walking as a very healthy way to replace short-haul transport. Okay, this is a promise. Mr. Yu Si-wing, 3 minutes. Right, I have two questions. The first is on provision of Hillside escalator link and elevator system. There are altogether 18 projects. So will they cover all old districts? If not, then how many are outstanding? And then for Shackley 1 estate, for the elevator, there is one footbridge near Kachui Court. So for that footbridge, will that be used in the future? When you design this project, have you considered using this footbridge so that the uses will not be overlapping? Ms. Poon, Chairman, thank you. I will take the first question, and Mr. Choi will take the second question. For Hillside escalator link and elevator system, based on past proposals, we are gradually implementing them. There are 3 that have been used. 4 of them are underway. There are 6 items that are in different stages of study and design. So when a project is mature, we will come to LegCo to get funding approval. So they still do not incorporate all districts because the Transport Department has received more than 110 suggestions covering many districts. At the end of last year, a consultancy study was done to see how the proposal can be carried forward. Mr. Choi, concerning the footbridge outside Greenock Court, at the initial stage of planning, we had considered whether that footbridge can be used. But there are 2 problems. First, the width is not enough to cope with the pedestrian volume. Besides, if that footbridge is to be used, and if it is to be connected to Shackley 1, then there is a big problem. We will have to make a big structural change to that footbridge. For the supporting steel structure, we will have to remove 2 supporting columns in order for the footbridge to be connected to that structure.
To do that, we need to provide an additional column which will have its landing on Castle Peak Road. So that's part of Castle Peak Road will have to be changed, will have to be narrowed to provide for the space. And this would be a lengthy process, and Castle Peak Road would be affected. So having balance of all factors, we believe that building a new new footbridge is more cost-effective. Dr. Kwok-Kake, I have a question about cost. The cost for the Yuen Long corridor is higher at $1.7 billion. The The one at Escalator is an uphill project, but the one in Yunnan is a project on flat land. Why is it so expensive? And the footbridge would connect with the Kaoyuk Road. Actually, for the entire part of that Yunnan, it's very congested. It's very busy. Why can't you extend it to further down? Because there is a keen competition of road space for between LRT and other uses. The pedestrian pavement is not wide enough. Would the government take the opportunity to widen the pavement, and or to reduce grade traffic so as to improve pedestrian safety? And also, is there any energy efficient system to save energy? And would you consider adopting certain green features, such as the installation of solar panels, so that you can use renewable energy? On the question of cost, there are caverns underground and also rock layer, which can be 100 to 200 meters deep, and some of the pilings has to reach 90 meters underground. It's at least 60% more expensive than other piling projects. Although this is done on the over the Nullah, but there are buildings on both sides of the Nullah, and in order not to affect the view of those buildings, we have a more transparent design, and the spanning distance can be up to 49 meters. That's why it's more expensive than other bridges. And then why we don't extend this to Martin Road, and it would only reach Kaoyuk Road? And even if we can serve 30,000 more from 126,000, the pedestrian volume is not very significant to warrant an extension. But we have a reserve and opening at Kaoyuk Road. If there are further new developments down the road, we can certainly extend the pedestrian corridor. And they said that on both sides of Castle Peak it's very congested. And now we are going to add one more footbridge. You can see from one of the two photos of the PowerPoint presentation, well, the pavement is very crowded because they have to use two crossings, one near Hong Kong Road and the other one is to the west. If we have a footbridge with a width of 6 meters, so more people will be crossing the road using the footbridge, and that would alleviate the congestions at those road crossings. Energy conservation installations. We're going to use LED light, which is more energy efficient, and also for the escalators, it would be activated by the pedestrian movement. What about solar panel? Photovoltaic solar panel? We haven't taken that on board. We can consider this. Well, yes, he's big use of the supporting column of the footbridge to install the solar panels. Mr. Chang Han-ben, I'm very much in favor of the pedestrian-friendly features advocated by the government. But for this project, it would take more than 10 years to complete. And then there's still many more projects on the waiting list. So you have to adjust the scoring system for the uphill, the escalator link and elevator projects. We don't know how many on the waiting list, how many of those on the waiting list would have to wait for many years. I'm in favor of these two bridges. First one on the one in Shackley. You were talking about the section from Kong Yip Street going uphill to Shackley. Kong Yip Street is a busy road with a lot of goods vehicle, and there is insufficient facilities for pedestrians. You have two lifts. What's the capacity of the lifts? Would there be a queue? And Washington Street is just next to this street, leading to War Yi Hub Road, and then to Washington Street, to War Yi Hub Road. The slope is also very steep. Would you do the same for Washington Street so that people living in War Yi Hub Street can also use the pedestrian walkway system to the MTR station? Deputy Secretary, when we take forward such a Hillside escalator link and elevator system, you can see from the annex that different projects present different difficulties. So residents may have different ideas, and different slopes will be affected. There are technical problems to overcome. Sometimes it's not that we don't want to do it quickly, but to take forward such projects, we need to spend a lot of time to have discussions with stakeholders before the difficulties can be overcome. For these hillside system, the scope is different, and the cost is different. They are carried out under the Public Works program, and we would implement those which have reached the mature state. Well, we will certainly review the scoring system to see whether the enhancement can be made. And we have received actually altogether 118 proposals, and we will try to prioritize them. And also in that review, we will also look at the possibility of improving the funding arrangement. I don't know whether there's time for my colleague to supplement. We understand the situation with War Yi Hub Street. We can certainly look into that with the Transport Department. We'll also look at the pedestrian environment of Kong Yip Street. But so far, this is not in the list of projects under this program. But we can certainly explore whether we can improve the pedestrian environment through other measures. For Washington Street, there's no proposals yet for an uphill lift and escalator system. But we can consider taking that on board after the review. What's the capacity for the lifts? Mr. Chu, there are two lifts at Kong Yip Street. There are two. It has capacity of 12. As Castle Peak Road, there's another lift with a capacity of 12, and then there's another lift to the west with a capacity of 16 passengers. We have made adjustments to the lift capacity and a sufficient waiting area is provided so that we can handle the pedestrian volume, even during peak hours, with 10 minutes left, and still 6 members are waiting to speak. I'll have to stop members right after 3 minutes. Mr. Lau Kok-fan, well, these are projects needed in the district. I hope you can get the funding quickly so that they can be implemented. You are going to start the project in 2019. So you are working under a very tight timetable, because after briefing the panel, you have to submit the item to the PWSC and then to the FC. People have been waiting for these projects for a long time, especially for those areas, uphill areas, and the people there have to use the ladder to go up and down for different destinations, and they would like to see this implemented. We can see that there's another footbridge parallel to this proposed one at Greenlaw Court. Can you provide a connection with that existing footbridge?
嘉翠園嗰邊咧，佢想上去上面咧都可以，就咁喺現有條天橋行過去新嗰條天橋度。
So can there be a connection between the new footbridge and the existing one to facilitate people's movement? Actually, I have given a very detailed response to the questions about the footbridge at Greenlaw Court. First of all, the width there is insufficient to cope with the volume. Secondly, a lot of structural changes will need to be made before it can be linked up with Shackley. And that would also involve making changes to the alignment of Castle Peak Road. And that's why we think that the proposal we are currently talking about is more appropriate. It's expected that the new footbridge will be used by a lot of elderly people. And for the lifts, according to some people, the ventilation is not very good, especially during the hot summer. In the past, the lifts were air-conditioned, but not now. So are you going to improve ventilation inside the lift?
Chairman, thank you. Regarding ventilation, our design standard is mechanical ventilation, and there won't be air conditioning anymore. When the elevator tower is designed, it won't be completely open with transparent glass. There will be a concrete wall blocking sunlight. Besides, the air exchange speed will determine the ventilation effect. So you don't need to worry too much about ventilation. Mr. Choi, I suggest that you take a closer look of that, because in elevators, usually the environment is rather stuffy. Yes, so please take a look at it. Mr. Chang Chung-tai. Thank you, Chairman. Regarding Shackley and Castle Peak Road, well, for the elevator system, every day there will be 5,000 man times in terms of utilization, and they propose a barrier-free corridor. Now, for the section linking Kung Yip Street, how are you going to refine the road supporting facilities for Kung Yip Street? I think, well, you are talking about daily pedestrian flow of 5,000. Then for Kung Yip Street, have you considered barrier-free facility or pedestrian crossing facilities? Because it is near an industrial area. So when there are more pedestrians there is a straight road linking the MTR station. So have you thought of how to cope with the future increase in pedestrian flow? Who will take the question? Mr. Choi. Regarding Kong Yip Street, as I said just now, we will work with the Transport Department to see whether there are improvement measures to improve pedestrian environment. Now, pedestrian flow is estimated to be 5,000, but some people will be to and from Castle Peak Road and Shek Lei, because some residents will go to Castle Peak Road to take different modes of transport to the urban area. They may not necessarily use the MTR station. So for those who use Kong Yip Street, there will be fewer than 5,000. So that means on Kong Yip Street there will be 2 sections of the footbridge. So you mean there are 2 different flows of pedestrian going to Kong Yip Street and going to Castle Peak Road? There are so these 2 numbers are combined in 5,000? Yes. Now, in the past 10 years, it's said that for the Nola and the footbridge and in the neighboring area, well, can there be some beautification function? This footbridge would like to reduce pedestrian flow laterally. But with this footbridge, how can you improve the environment? Because that area is rather messy now. And if there are large-scale shopping centers in the future, there will be big change. So do you have a clear plan about the neighboring environment of the footbridge? Who is to answer the question? Chairman, thank you. Mr. Low, for the NOLA, the DSD has got a NOLA improvement work on Kong Yip Street to Martin Road. But then that part will overlap with the footbridge in our plan. So we are working closely with the Highways Department to make sure that there won't be impact from our construction works. But he is asking about beautification. Now, for the NOLA improvement project, there are 2 objectives. First, the sewage will be brought to the Yuen Long sewage treatment plant. After that, the NOLA will be revitalized. So it's like Chin Kai Chun in Korea. Okay, next, Mr. Poon Siu Ping. Thank you, Chairman. I support these 2 items. I hope that they will start as soon as possible, because it has been 10 years already since they were proposed, and it will take 4 to 5 years for them to be completed. So the cost of these items is 584 million and 1.7 odd billion respectively. The reason why they are costly is because of the very deep foundation. Well, we understand that, but for the timetable, both projects will only be completed in 2023. Why so long? If you get funding approval from FC within this year, then completion will be in 2023, otherwise even later. So can you expedite the works? Why are both projects so time-consuming? Can you expedite your work? Chairman, thank you. For the elevator system from Castle Peak Road to Shek Lei, there isn't much room for further acceleration in the time schedule because construction has to take place on the slope. So this is a geographical constraint. We cannot expedite the work by adding more manpower and machinery. So there is quite a big limitation to the time required. So it will take around 3 years. I will defer to Mr. Low to talk about Yuen Long. Mr. Low, thank you, Chairman. For the footbridge in Yuen Long, it will be built on the NOLA. For the NOLA, it serves Yuen Long for discharging flood water. So we have to make sure that this function will not be affected. So we have to build the foundation in 3 dry seasons. So that means the foundation itself will take 3 years. We will try our best to compress the work, so the remaining 2 years will be for the superstructure and the electrical and mechanical works. At this stage, we will consider whether the works can be completed by, for example, adjusting the order of works. Okay. Mr. Tony Zhe, para 8 of the paper, I would like to thank the Highways Department for taking into consideration the views of the 4 professional institutes. Thank you, Highways Department, for all the related arrangement. And they have forwarded the views to Yuen Long District Council for consideration. In terms of design, well, it is hoped that the design can be improved. Reference can be taken from Chin Kai Chun of Seoul about the NOLA design so that the NOLA can be better. At the end of the day, we will respect the final decision of the district. And then regarding the external appearance of the footbridge, well, I believe the government has consulted the advisory committee on footbridges. For elevated footbridge, in relation to the design, well, first of all, I am concerned about screening. And the next thing is about smart design, because very often for footbridges, the government will make use of these footbridges for advertising of certain events. So I hope you will take better care of the electricity arrangement for those advertising billboards, because now we are talking about smart city. So sometimes the external appearance of all those billboards is not satisfactory. We do want to have a better view. So I hope that greening will be done. This should not be treated as just an assignment. Please make more use of landscape designers and solicit their views more. So for the project itself, I support it. It was proposed in 2009. In Yuen Long, actually there is serious congestion of pedestrians. Yes, Mr. Zhe has given his opinion. So concerning footbridge design, it's better to provide for some advertising space. It is better than just putting up some banners here and there. Right, I support these items. There are many more items outstanding, but I would like to ask about the 18 items in Appendix 2. Now, well, some have been completed already, and Hospital Authority will pay the bill for that one around Princess Margaret Hospital, but for the one in Cheung Kwan O, there is no timeline. And then for number 18, well, that involves complicated land issues. I want to know, for items within this list, will they all be done? And even when there are technical issues in relation to property rights, land use of land rights, and so on, are all those problems solvable? Ms. Pun, actually, there is a scoring system. In 2009, 20 proposals were received, and we have come up with this order. So that also is related to the feasibility studies and technical studies done. If initially speaking, a certain item is technically possible, then the government will do a site investigation, consultation of district councils and stakeholders, gazetto and land resumption, and so on. So as I explained just now, each item is challenging in its own way. If there is support from members of the district on the alignment and treatment of dangerous slopes, then it can be implemented. For those down the list, item 16, 17, or item 14, the Highways Department will conduct preliminary feasibility study. And if an item is technically feasible and if all the challenges can be overcome, then we will also work on it. And I will ask my colleague to comment on land use. Mr. Choi. Thank you, Chairman. From Shui Wo Court to Fulton Station, well, for that alignment, government land and housing authority land are involved. And then there are also some sites which used to be link sites, so the issue is rather complicated. So government departments will have to take care of the arrangement of land use before the items can be implemented. So in other words, you will work on those 18 items, but there are still some outstanding problems. Next, Mr. Kwang Chun-yu. I am concerned about 182 TB, the Yuen Long elevated walkway proposal. Will this cost be the highest among all similar footbridges? Highways Department, Mr. Low. Thank you, Chairman. I do not have historical record of to say whether this is the highest cost, but it is costly for some special reasons. Well, underneath this proposed site, there are some caverns, and the depth of the stone structure is 20 to 100 meters. And the deepest pile will have to go to 90 meters deep. And then on the two sides of the footbridge, there are buildings. We don't want to affect the view of these residents. So, Mr. Low, I think you have already explained. The question is whether this is the highest cost historically. But then, well, you don't know what the next one is like in terms of cost. 1.7 billion for a footbridge.
There were controversies, and the past cost figures were not as high as $1.7 billion. According to information available to me, when it was discussed at the district council, we were talking about a few hundreds of millions, and suddenly it's a $1.7 billion. And of course, I won't say this is a budget overrun. Can you explain why the cost is so high? I think that's been explained. Well, the piling has to reach a very deep level. According to a conservative estimate, it would cost 60% more than other piling work. It was mentioned in the 2008 Mr. Donald Trum's policy address. And in 2014, the four professional bodies gave views in the district council saying that the cost may be a problem, and whether it was not carried out comprehensively, and if you do not do anything about Khao Yok Road's pedestrian environment, the footbridge will not be able to improve pedestrian connectivity. Since this is going to be very expensive, it's $1.7 billion. That's why we want you to take a hard look at whether the objective can be reached, and that is you want to improve connectivity for pedestrians, and this is not a footbridge that would go all the way to Martin Road. What about the 2014 views from the 4 professional institutes? Are you really sure that this is going to improve the pedestrian environment at Khao Yok Road? I was talking about 2 black spots, one near the Castle Peak Road, another one to the west. So we provide an additional footbridge of 6 meters in width. And when you go up to the footbridge, you can have direct access to Long Ping Station. This is very convenient for pedestrians. It would actually divert many pedestrians to this particular footbridge instead of using the road. The 4 institutes include the Hong Kong Institute of Planners. At that time, we came up with a separate option, and both options were presented to the District Council for a very thorough discussion. Of course, we respect the decision made by the local District Council, and they, after discussion, they opted for the original proposal, which would provide a direct access. They think this is better. It doesn't mean the other is not good, but it's just that this original proposal provide a direct access. All right, we need to move on. So far, I haven't had any comment of objection. So I take it that members support this item, this project. Mrs. Regina Yip, you want to ask questions? Yes, a simple one. I support this project because it provides a lot of convenience. $1.7 billion looks a high cost. Okay, we have visited the Bay Area, and they have a nuclear lab facility which costs only $2.3 billion. And what about the manpower requirement for this project? Do we need specialized workers? Or piling is done by machine, so manpower requirement is not big. We don't think manpower is going to be a problem. What about noise mitigation and control? Is it very noisy? We would have to apply for a noise permit in accordance with the Environmental Protection Ordinance. So this will be done according to law. Well, I also got a question. Okay, please be quick. I think this has to be the last question. I'll be quick. I have a question about the Kwai Chung project. Next to this.
而家其實都幾失收，所以我覺得
There's another footbridge. I appreciate this proposal, but for the landing spot, well, there will be a lift tower, and there are people who don't need to go across the street. There are people who just need to have a pedestrian lane to go downhill. Would there be any extension or expansion of the pavement? Mr. Chi, for the lift tower serving Castle Peak Road, yes, people can use the lift and the ladder to go to Castle Peak Road. Yes. There are 2 bus stops near the lift tower, one going forward, one the other way. Are you going to do something about the steep road? It's steep and it's narrow. You have to do something about the road. I will look at the gradient. Okay, I support the project. Mr. Choi, maybe you can look into this with the member. because it seems that you don't quite understand where the locations are. All right, we move on to the next item, the legislative amendments on enhancing the safety requirements of road works. Let's invite your new team of officials to join us.
好，首先多謝相關嘅官員係出席今日嘅會議。
I'd like to welcome the officials. The list of officials is on the table, so I won't read the names out one by one. We're going to have an introduction to the subject. Mr. Choi? Mr. Hong. Mr. Hong. Ms. Chung? Actually, we reported to the panel last July on the review in respect of roadworks safety. We talk about the amending a code, and which has become effective on the 1st of January. One of the important improvement is to provide better safeguard for the guarding installation of roadworks in case of accident. We talk about we will consider amending the law to provide better safeguard. And after consulting the DOJ, we are going to do something about road traffic control regulations Cap 374G to propose the inclusion of such standards. And I would now invite Mr. Hong to brief members on the details. Good morning, Chairman and members. We have prepared a PowerPoint to brief members on the latest developments regarding legislative amendments to improve safety requirements of road work. The Highways Department has prescribed a code of practice for the lighting, signing, and guarding of roadworks under the Cap 374. When carrying out road works, the contractor should follow the requirements of the code to safeguard the safety of road users and road works operatives. The Highways Department has followed the relevant development of standards and update the code. The second edition of the code was gazetted on the 16th of June 2017. And the commencement date was the 1st of January this year. And we also briefed this panel in July last year. There was a serious road accidents involving cars and roadworks operatives in 2016. In the paper we submitted to the panel last July, we indicated that we would like to amend the law to further strengthen the regulation of traffic control and guarding measures during road works. Having consulted the Department of Justice, we would like to brief members on the proposed amendments to Cap 374G, and that is the road traffic control regulations.
檢討結果咧可以分為3個方面嘅。 第一咧就係雖然現行嘅法例對道路工程
we have introduced requirements on signs, road markings, barriers, and road hazard warning lanterns at the locations. But there's no requirement on guarding measures. And in Schedule 5, we have taken on board some of the requirements in the code. Because failure to do this constitutes an offense, and there are outdated requirements on road hazard warning lanterns. And there are only the explicit requirements on lanterns, road markings, and penalties provided for. And we have to rely on Section 109(05). This is contrary to the position in Section 109(5) of the ordinance. And that is a failure of any person to observe any provision in the code shall not of itself render the person liable to criminal proceedings.
加入一啲防護措施嘅要求。
Therefore, we are going to introduce into the law the relevant requirements on guarding, such as flashing lights, warning lights, and also the guarding vehicles. As we said, we have referred to the code. And under Section 20, the contractor has to provide the relevant road markings, warning letters, and Schedule 5 as directly reference to the code. If the person in charge do not provide the relevant road markings and warning, it's an offense. But as I've said,
就係定明咗咧，任何人係唔會。
Under Section 109(5) of the ordinance, no one shall be deemed to have committed a crime if the code is not observed. So Section 109(5) is in conflict with Section 20. To avoid this, we would like to provide in Schedule 5 that the relevant requirements on signs, road markings, barriers, and road hazard warning lanterns, instead of making direct reference to code. For example, there should be suitable signs, road markings to be provided by the roadwork contractors. And also there should be guarding vehicles with suitable buffer facility.
And then the third point is in Schedule 5 of the code, there are some outdated light standards. For example, the coal-fired kerosene burning lantern that are no longer used, and also some outdated design. So we propose to remove these transitional provisions and outdated standards. So far, 5 members had indicated to speak. Each will have 3 minutes. I will draw a line here because there won't be enough time. Mr. Chen Chen-ying, thank you, Chairman. So we are talking about how to enhance safety requirements of roadworks to minimize risk faced by road users and workers. I will support these amendments. But then there was a very serious traffic accident when traffic policemen wanted to collect those some buffers and so on, and also road signs. They were badly injured in a traffic accident. As a result, they died. But then in these proposals, there is no mention of such possibility and the possible solution. So during road works, is there any way to reduce traffic accident risk? For example, as ancillary aids can be used so that policemen will not have to pick up these tools on the road. Well, even though the police enforce traffic rules, it is not part of road works. But then in the future, will these legislative amendments be taken into consideration in future road works? Well, concerning the traffic accident that you mentioned, it is still in the process of investigation, so I'm not in a position to comment on it. But then concerning picking up those tools and removal of those tools, well, that is regarded as a mobile operation. And in this legislative amendment, for mobile operations, we ask that vehicle bumpers should be put in place to protect the workers. So we hope that this is helpful. And then for law enforcers setting up roadblock on roads, this is not within the scope of road works. I believe they do have their operation codes to ensure their safety. So that means the police arrangement is not governed by the Highways Department's code. Yes, they do have their own rules or code. Okay. Mr. Michael Tin has moved a temporary motion related to today's agenda. We need time to handle it, but there is not a quorum now, so we will notify other members to come in. Mr. Tony Tse, 3 minutes. Yes. In relation to legislative amendments on enhancing the safety requirements of roadworks, I am in support because life is the most valuable. And we don't want to see any injury. So if there are additional facilities or regulations or penalties for safety's sake, no one will object to such proposal. Now, I would like to ask about the code, especially codes written in the law. For example, light signals, and so on, or signs and directions. I want to know whether the Highways Department can write this code in a more flexible way, because once it is written in the law, it's difficult to amend it. So, as you know, lights or lighting equipment advance rapidly. And very often, even the color of the light signals is stated in the law. So how can we make sure that drivers and road users are better reminded about road works? And concerning flexibility, so Director of Highways may take reference from overseas practice, and that there may be some new lighting equipment that is better in alerting the road users. In that case, will the law have to be amended? Then that would be rather cumbersome. So can there be some flexibility? Okay, can there be administrative measures instead of legislative amendments? Yes, we have to consider legislative amendments very carefully. And we will not lay down very detailed technical requirements in the law. Because for detailed technical requirements, when technology develops, when standards evolve, there may be the need for minor changes. And we don't want to amend the law just for the purpose of minor changes. Now, we always state our objective very clearly when there is legislative amendment. For the code, there are very often detailed requirements for the industry, but then as regards our objective standards, these will be spelled out in the law. Thank you. Next, Mr. Poon Siu Ping. Thank you, Chairman. Just now, the department said that in January this year, the new code of practice came into effect. Of course, we don't want to see accidents or casualty when roads are repaired. So far, what is the progress since the new code is put into practice? Now, for this legislative amendment, of course, the operator's criminal liability is involved. Maximum penalty is 500,000 fine and 12 years of imprisonment for under the Occupational Safety and Health law. Now, for this case, are you talking about 50,000 and imprisonment of 11 months or 3 months? Well, do you think there is enough deterrent effect, Mr. Choi, concerning the implementation of the code? It actually came into effect on the 1st of January this year. So it has only been a short time since then. We will monitor the situation to gauge the actual effects. In the first 2 months, we looked at the traffic accident numbers. There are 4 accidents, but there is no fatality. We'll continue to monitor the situation to see whether things are satisfactory. Well, Mr. Poon's question is, do you think the penalties are deterrent enough? That's the first point. And secondly, how will the court rule usually? Because even if the maximum penalty is very heavy, if the court tends to pass down lighter judgment, that will not be useful. So first offense, $5,000 fine or 3-month imprisonment. Second offense, $10,000 fine and 6-month imprisonment. So for this level of penalty, it is in line with the existing law. Regarding the level of fines, you may think that it is still far away from the Occupational Safety and Health law. First of all, it's in line with existing legislation because existing legislation covers other requirements with more or less the same level of penalty. Now, in the penalty, there is imprisonment for 3 months or 6 months. So for the person in charge of the works, I think this is quite deterrent enough. Next, Mr. Michael Tin. Thank you, Chairman. In 2016, I raised a written question already on this item. At that time, I asked for 3 things. That is this law and also guarding measures. And number 2, enhancement of the penalty. Number 3, the law should also target at the contractor of the works. But then this is not done. So after 2 years now, we are given this legislative amendment is quite good. But you only did 1 out of the 3 things that I mentioned. You only worked on guarding of road works. In relation to enhancing penalty, maximum penalty is 10 years imprisonment for dangerous driving leading to death. And then concerning the fatal traffic accident that happened some time ago in relation to removal of those road facilities, maximum penalty is only 6 months. I think, is that too light? Chairman, as far as I know, usually the judge will refer to the maximum penalty in making his decision. So if the maximum penalty is heavy enough, and if death was caused, then the penalty won't be too light. So I do not find the 3-month, 6-month imprisonment acceptable. Well, in case if death is caused, there should be a very different level of penalty. And then finally, concerning contractor of the works, you only target at the person in charge. So this time, person A is arrested, and then, well, because usually the lowest bidder wins the contract. And I don't know what kind of quality they have, and then the persons in charge will be the scapegoats. So I think the contractor should also be penalized. Should it be criminal liability? I think this can be discussed. So let me have your response, please, concerning the contractor as well as the penalty. Mr. Choi. Thank you, Chairman. Now, regarding the penalty, we will take a closer look of it. Mr. Michael Tin referred to an example of dangerous driving leading to death, and also some guarding of road works. Well, these are different in nature. Dangerous driving will directly lead to death, but even if guarding is not provided, it may not lead to death. It's just that there is a lack of appropriate protection for workers. So the nature is different. So we should not equate the two things. But we understand member is concerned about whether the penalty is enough. So we will work with the DOJ to see whether the penalty can be further adjusted. We'll follow things up. Then concerning the contractor of works, in the law, we're referring to the person in charge of the works. As regards contractor, now when it comes to lighting, signing, and guarding, well, it all depends on on-site operation, not only whether enough resources are provided by the contractor.
So the person in charge of the works have to make sure that at the work location, suitable measures are provided for the drivers and for workers there. So that's why we asked that the person in charge be held accountable. But of course, the contractor has to implement a monitoring system on how the works are carried out. Any penalty? Is there any penalty on the contractor if one of his projects causes death? Will he be blacklisted for, say, 3 months in relation to the tendering of projects for the Highways Department? We will pursue his liability for the project, for problems caused under the project. Payment may be deducted. We can praise the performance, which may affect their eligibility for the tendering for projects. And there are also other administrative measures that we can take. There are 2 members who would like to speak after I've drew the line, but I have already announced that we are running out of time that we cannot allow more members to speak. Well, I'm in favor of your proposal to provide more requirements. You require that cones be placed as long as 600 meters behind the work area, depending on the curve, the bend, whether it's left or right. But very often, if it's at a bend, then as soon as you see the cone, you are already almost there. So I propose some amendments to make to take care of the bend. We have received some WhatsApp messages concerning the collection of cones after work is completed. It's already automated on the mainland. Can you introduce similar measures to reduce the risk of injuries and fatalities relating to the collection of cones? For example, we are talking about not smaller than a distance of 600 meters. The person in charge should have regard to the actual circumstances and come up with a suitable arrangement. So requirement is the minimum on the collection of cones after work. We also want to promote mechanization of such work. There are the mechanical machine means for the placing and collection of cones. This is being practiced on the mainland, but their operations are different from ours. Their design is not quite able to cater for our needs in terms of placing of cones. And we are now working with the Hong Kong Productivity Council so that we can use some mechanical tools to place cones on the road. I'm saying that there's no need to conduct any R&D. It's already available in the market. Many motorists are saying that as soon as you make the turn along the bend, you see that there is road work ahead. So you need to extend the distance. But you are now saying that they should do this of their own initiative. Well, actually, when cones are placed, the local circumstances should be considered. We need to handle Mr. Michael Tien's motion. Unless we are short of 3 members, please sound the bell.
為咗爭取時間呢，我哋不如
To save time, maybe Mr. Michael Tin, you can read out your motion now, please. In view, well, I've been someone criticized the low standard of my assistant. They have a lot to say about this. Let me read out the motion. In view of the frequent traffic accidents involving road workers and vehicles, and most of the injuries and fatalities involve road workers, to enhance safety for road workers, this panel urges the government to increase the statutory penalties in relation to the requirements on guarding facilities and road safety requirements, because the maximum penalty right now is 6 months. Second, the relevant legislative amendments must include stipulations on the penalties and liabilities of contractors, which is absent at the present moment. Well, I would like to remind non-panel members that only panel members can vote on this motion. And I'll put Mr. Michael Tin's motion to the vote. Would those in favor please raise your hands? We can do it quicker if it's a show of hands. Those against, please raise their hands. 1. Abstentions? Please, hands up, please. No. So I think the motion is passed. And now move on to the next item on the agenda. Please invite the officials to join us.
今日嘅議程第5項呢，就係增設交通探測器行車速度評及行車時間。
Item number 5, installation of additional traffic detectors, speed map panels, and journey time indication systems.
嗱，由於我哋已經係過咗時呢，唔係好夠時間討論呢。
We are running short of time, so I'm going to extend the meeting time to 10:45. It's an extension of 15 minutes. I would like to welcome the officials. Under Secretary, are you going to give an introduction? Oh yes, I will be brief so that we can have more time for questions and answers. The government has been trying to develop smart traffic systems and adoption of technology so as to promote relevant smart city initiatives, and one of them is to promote at the end of 2020 installed traffic detectors, so the Transport Department is aware of the traffic situations, and also to announce more real-time traffic information. There will be 2 phases to the scheme. In the first phase, there will be the installation of some 520 sets of traffic detectors on the strategic routes. It was already the funding was already approved by this council, and the design was completed in 2017. and the relevant projects will start in the middle of 2018 to be completed in 2020. And secondly, we are going to provide 11 sets of journey time indication systems and enhance one existing speed road panel so that the public can better plan their journeys and select suitable routes. We are going to submit the item to the PWSC expeditiously so that in the first half of this year we can submit the funding application to the FC. And now I would like to defer to the Transport Department for a briefing of the relevant works items. We are happy to take questions from members. Chairman, 45% of our major trunk roads are equipped with traffic detectors. They are shown in blue in this map. They are part of the tunnel traffic management system. You have to speed up. And we have also got 10 sets of journey time indication system on both sides of the 3 Cross Harbour tunnels, showing the journey time for Cross Harbour tunnels. And we have also 5 sets of speed map panel. For these new facilities and also for the previous phase taken together, we can cover 80% of our major routes.
We propose to install 520 traffic detectors. 410 are visual detectors. They can gather information on the flow of vehicles and they can automatically detect traffic incidents. And then there are other car plate detector. We have 94 Bluetooth detectors to gather data on average vehicle speed and journey time. And for the gathered information, our Transport Department Traffic Control Center colleagues can then monitor traffic. And then after deleting personal information, the information will be transmitted in an electronic way. So our website and app and also the other related platforms will display the information. Will privacy problems be caused? Let me explain. Actually, we will only show the back of the vehicle to show the car plate. So the driver will not be shown. And then there is a built-in software to detect the car plate, and the car plate will be encrypted immediately. And then the data will come to the system of the Transport Department via the network. And then when it reaches our system, information in the traffic detectors will be immediately deleted. And then in the vehicle license registration system, there are 2 pieces of information. First, the encrypted car plate information, and second, the car type, car model. For information gathered from traffic detectors and also information in our system, we will do a comparison. And then we'll see what vehicles are we talking about, and then we can calculate the number of such vehicles using that road section. Besides, for visual detectors, I want to repeat that we will not do video recording. However, we will select some of the visual detectors and we will issue snapshots to the public. For Bluetooth detectors, when vehicles are in front of the detector, each Bluetooth detector contains a unique serial number, and then we will have this serial number and the time at which the car goes past, and then a different piece of information will be collected by another Bluetooth detector. The information will all go to our centralized system, and then the time gap will be able to tell us the journey time and also speed of vehicle. And then we will then delete the information from the Bluetooth detectors. That's all in my presentation. Thank you. 8 members would like to speak. Each member will have 3 minutes. I will draw a line here because I guess time will be almost up by then. Mr. Lam Chuk Ting, Chairman, I want to ask about the gathering of information on car plates. Now, will the camera... Okay, you said that only the back of the vehicle will be captured. Then what about the glass behind the back seat? Will it be captured? No, it's not possible for it to be captured. Why? Because we do not have the intention to capture it. I am not asking for your intention. I mean, technically speaking, will it be possible that the camera will actually see the inside of the vehicle? Well, Mr. Law, let me explain. The camera will be above ground by 8 to 10 meters. And we will try our best not to capture the situation inside the vehicle. Yes, there is the possibility. Who is the first official giving me the answer? Mr. Pang? Mr. Pang? That means you are giving wrong information to LegCo without careful consideration. I asked whether it's technically possible. You said no, but then your colleague said yes. So I think you must give accurate information to LegCo. So that means the inside of vehicle can also be captured. Is there any way to avoid that? Our colleague just said that the detector is above ground. So the angle will be such that the front part of the vehicle won't be captured. Well, do you have common sense? If the camera is vertically above the car, then it won't be able to see the car plate. So it has to be at a slanting angle. Then that means the window behind the back seat will be shown. So that means it is possible that the inside can be captured. So can you tell me how to avoid this? If you haven't thought of this carefully, please go back to consider. I am really very infuriated. Mr. Law, now for the detector capturing car plate, no image will be sent to the system of Transport Department. The car plate will be immediately recognized by the detector. Well, okay, I understand. Your answer is much better than the first official. Okay, if that's the case, are there technical staff monitoring the shooting or the operation of the camera? Will the inside of the car be captured? For this license plate recognition detectors, there won't be operators monitoring the process. The process is automatic, and no images will be sent to our center. Okay, the answer is given. Mr. Tam, my question is, how much is the cost? How much is the cost? 238.6 million. 238.6 million. Where in the paper can I see this number? Mr. Tam, are you going to continue with your questioning? The paper doesn't give us the amount. Well, you can find it in para 12. Okay, thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Then my next question is, you spend this money. Actually, Google can provide you with such information without installing any column. I think you have heard about connected cars. Different car manufacturers are promoting this. I don't know what the Chinese name is. So I think a lot of the functions that you are thinking of will be made possible by future car technology. So can we think of that technology instead of erecting many columns? People will get the feeling that there is a lot of surveillance. So perhaps you can encourage members of the public to use apps, mobile phone apps. So when they drive, I think it is possible that this information can be provided. So members of the public can help you solve some information issues. So on buses, taxis, and so on, for example, certain equipment can be installed, then more data can be obtained. You are talking about data about traffic congestion. Now, in other countries, some devices are installed in taxis to see whether roads are safe. For instance, drivers have to brake cars very fast, or they may usually accelerate very fast and so on at certain spot. Such information can be captured. So have you thought of connected cars? That will make a lot of functions possible. So in that way, then we don't need many columns to be erected. 15 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Tam, for the question. We have heard you. We'll go back to do some studies, but I want to emphasize that we'd like to get different traffic data, and your suggestion so far cannot fulfill our goal. Mr. Michael Tin, well, I support this item on making use of technology to improve the flow of traffic. Now, there will be automatic car license plate recognition detectors. Okay, so privacy problem so far has been solved, but then all along we face traffic-related problems when there are these yellow markings. There are always vehicles on them, and there are not enough police officers enforcing the law. I have talked about this for a long time. If there are CCTVs, then a lot of the troubles can be removed. In Singapore, pictures will be taken immediately when there is breaching vehicle. Now here you can see this bus, and there is a car right next to it. The bus is on the outer lane. Then what about the what about the wheelchair users? It is very difficult for them. This situation is caused because there is no surveillance. Now you are able to solve the privacy problem. Last time I asked the Secretary for Security. I think the Security Bureau and the Transport Bureau are passing the ball to one another. The Transport Department is in support of CCTV, but they said that there is law enforcement problem. The Security Bureau said that they are responsible for law enforcement, but the bill will not be paid by them. It will be paid by the Transport Department. But then the Transport Department said that the Security Bureau is responsible for law enforcement and that they won't have the power to do it. So now the problem is the ball is always in between these two sides, coming back and forth. So, Undersecretary, now you have this. You are able to recognize license plate, and you have solved the privacy problem. Then at all the junctions and busy bus stops, you can install the detectors. The Secretary for Security said that you will have to pay the cost, but they will enforce the law. Can you work with them to solve the problem together? Because there has been a long delay. Thank you, Mr. Tin. This is a complicated issue. Why complicated? We'll use the technology data to improve traffic surveillance. If there is illegal parking, actually, we are working with the relevant government department on how to use technology to improve traffic. Well, then will you discuss with them? Will you discuss with Security Bureau? We will follow up on this item. Next, Mr. Mok Nai Kwong. Chairman, I know that some members are concerned about the use of the automatic license plate recognition detectors. I have read the paper. I have talked to the officials. I know that only encrypted data will leave the detectors. So I want to ascertain this. For the encrypted data, you said you will use SHA-256, which is actually a type of SHA-2 encryption method. So I want to tell members that 7 years ago, when we had the preliminary election in Democratic Party, we used tablets to get residents' Hong Kong ID information, and the encrypted data cannot make a return route, so that is safe. We have asked the data privacy officer to check it, and they said that it's okay. So even though the data are encrypted at that time, within 48 hours, we deleted the information. Okay, so are you going to store some information? If so, for how long?
You also have Bluetooth detectors, which will gather information on vehicles. Are we talking about Bluetooth device like those are used to listen to music? So are you going to use the Bluetooth in my vehicle? What are you going to do to protect privacy? The first three questions. The first one I think is already answered in one of the points in the paper. Yes, the data will be encrypted, and there will be no storage. It will be deleted. What about the encrypted data? How long would you keep them? A few minutes. Well, after we have used the data for our system. Bluetooth detectors. It's either mobile phone or vehicle. And what about the data? No storage? Yes, deleted after we have used the data. Mr. Aulokin, according to the Bureau, the data will be deleted after use. And you have the automatic license plate recognition detector and Bluetooth detector. Are you going to make it available such data to other departments such as the police for evidential purpose? Is it deletion after use, or it can be provided on request? We will not provide stored data for law enforcement purposes later on. I think you can categorize the vehicles by looking at the dimensions, the size, and so on. Because the biggest concern is privacy. And I don't think this meeting can resolve those problems in such a short meeting. This has to do with the question of why you need the data for your purposes. I hope you can address the problem of privacy. And also we'd like to say something about journey time indication systems. I have a motion which I hope that the Bureau can consider. You are going to install different panels in different districts. I think this is not going to be adequate. For example, in the Southern District. Of course, I welcome the installation of such panels on Avenue South Street. I've proposed other locations, for example, northbound lane of Port Fulam Village, and also Aberdeen Playground. You should also install journey time indication panels. I hope members of this panel can support my motion. I'm going to deal with your motion in a moment. You don't require any reply from the officials? Mr. Lau Kwok-fan. Support the installation of additional traffic detectors, a speed map panel, and journey time indication systems so that information on traffic can be gathered to facilitate traffic management and the public. The important thing is to protect privacy. I think you have explained what you are going to do in this regard. Well, and I would like to know the criteria for installing such systems. And on top of these detectors, I have asked for the cameras to be installed to catch those who jumped red lights, and I've been given very perfunctory replies. So I would like to know how we can ask for more of such systems and devices and detectors to be installed. And Mr. Aulokin has proposed, has moved a motion, and is covering mainly Hong Kong Island. I have make other suggestions. You have given us a list. But apart from those in the list, what other locations are suitable? Because district councillors know the local conditions. We have here also district councillors. If you just consider this promotion covering certain districts, then I would think that you should approach different district councils for possible addition to the list of locations to be equipped with such devices. Undersecretary, your views are noted. We are actually looking at this from the perspective of traffic and management and traffic management. I hope instead of giving a list to the district council, you should go to the district council to gauge their views on possible locations. All right, I received this motion by Mr. Aulokin. We've still got 7 minutes. Now we're going to speak because this is my turn, but we only got 7 minutes. I will sound the bell to summon members. I have a simple question. Do you use the so-called intelligent street lamp post system for installation? Yes, we use this intelligent lamppost. But what about intelligence positioning system to be installed underground? Because that would be part of the smart mobility system for the future. Are you going to do this? We have no intention to install the underground positioning system under this program. Well, if you have to do this later, it would be more expensive. And now you have to go to the FC in due course. Well, you haven't consulted the district councils, as Mr. Lau Kok-fan has said. Some members are not here. So perhaps before you proceed to the FC, can you please consult the district councils first on possible additions? I think members do not object to this program, but they may not like to see the coverage extended. Are we going to consult the district councils first? We have heard members' views. We will look into this after the meeting. All right, let's wait for sufficient numbers of members to return before we vote on the motion. While we are waiting, I would like to ask members whether you will support the submission of this item on the program to the PWSC and the FC. So it's agreed? No objection? No objection.
解釋咗㗎啦，不過俾佢讀啦，因為有啲人啱入嚟。即係代表一個數字啫，一個 number 咁解啫，即係幾多分鐘
？It will only show the minutes, the amount of time.
嗱，我哋把握時間啦。我請阿區諾軒。
All right, Mr. Au, please read out your motion. This council requires that the government to install more journey time indication system, including Port Fulham Road near Port Fulham village northbound direction, showing the number of minutes to be used if you, and also Wong Chuk Hang Road near the Hong Aberdeen sports ground northbound, and also the to tie in with the system on Aberdeen Bridge so as to facilitate motorists. Well, may I clarify whether we are in a district council or is this actually the legislative council? I don't know what X and Y means. 38, 36 or 28 is X or Y. Well, I think we understand, but I'm not we. In that case, I have to vote against it. Will those in favor please raise their hands? How many are in favor? 11. Those against? Please raise your hands. 5. Abstentions? 3. Abstention? Hands up, please. 4. This motion is carried. Last item on the agenda, AOB. Nothing on the AOB. Thank you.